Hi, and welcome back to Periscope, the paranormal from A to Z. We are here at the Savannah Paranormal Museum, and we're bringing you all things paranormal from A to Z. And today, episode is brought to you by the letter E.
E for episode.
Yes. Episode begins with E, and,
E.
and there we have it,
Like
an episode.
Ethereal?
Ethereal is a good word. Ethereal suggests that it is of the ether, and the belief that the ether was either a place that the spirits dwell, or that it was the external dimension of the ether, sometimes spelled A-E-T-H-E-R.
Really?
Or yes, it depends on where you're going with your ether. In the case of A-E-T-H-E-R, it was actually the source power for all supernatural things, the ether in which you draw your supernatural abilities, and the ether being sort of this other plane of energy field that we could tap into and oftentimes interact with. That's also where they believe the spirits actually are, in the ether.
And that's where we get our internet.
Yes, of course. That is
Our
also where we
Ethernet
get our
cables.
Ethernet cables, which plug directly into spirits' belly buttons.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
People
It's
don't
like
realize
a
that.
spiritual umbilical cord
That's
to get
right.
the internet.
That's it. The internet is just umbilical data. This has already gotten off to a weird start.
Yeah, well, that's good. Let's see. What other E words can I think of? Or you.
We
could
had
think
actually talked about the fact that we would probably land on exorcism.
of.
in E.
Exorcism. That's a good E word.
So exorcism being the rites of any, and it's weird because we're going to say that any religion or religious practice that utilizes prayer or any type of command to remove a spirit from a place, person, or thing can be considered exorcism. But what's interesting is it doesn't necessarily even have to be religious. The word exorcism, I'm going to go out on a branch here and say I believe it comes from the Greek, and it means to bind with oath. The X part being remove through binding by oath. So you use an oath, or you use words to compel something to leave. That's how you exorcise something. And so it became synonymous with the act of using very specific prayers, very specific rituals to remove something. So you're binding a spirit to the words, and the words are get out.
Nice.
Now, we are mostly familiar with Catholic exorcism
Because of the movie Exorcism.
because of the movie Exorcist.
Exorcist. Sorry.
But, of course, exorcism is practiced in almost every culture on the face of the earth. Everybody has a means of destroying or getting rid of or driving out spirits, and they usually involve ritual. And it is that ritual which is exorcism. The exorcism is utilizing predetermined actions to remove the spirit. In your Catholic dogmatic practice of exorcism, you have stages of possession. You don't go straight into possession. You actually start with an infestation, which is more like a haunting. It seems like a poltergeist, things moving around, strangeness. Then you move into obsession. Obsession is when you're paying so much attention to all that infestation activity that you start to kind of give up a lot of your own free will because you are so either paranoid, frightened, or whatever of all the activity. Then comes oppression. Oppression is when your behavior starts to change because of the presence of the spirit. The spirit is oppressing you and causing you to behave in a certain way. And then the final step is possession. Possession is when the spirit has control over you through the means of infestation, obsession, and oppression. So those are usually the stages in which a presence in your home can influence you, leading to that final step, that possession. Possession isn't a spirit jumps in your body and drives you around like a Cadillac. It is more of a process by which your will is sort of dwindled down upon.
That's fascinating. I didn't know that there were different stages like that. I literally thought it was just to jump in and drive.
And it's an interesting thing because a lot of people, when they even hear about a demonic possession, it always starts with they were playing with a Ouija board, or they were doing a seance, or they do. So these are steps that you have to go through, because it's all about how exposed you are to the spirit. And a lot of people think that it is about the spirit taking over. It's really not. It's about the spirit corrupting you. It's about the spirit making you the vessel for its ill deeds. And that is why in exorcisms, you're calling upon the person still there to combat the demon that is controlling, because it's not possession in the sense that they've driven the person away. It's that they've bogged that person down to such a degree that they don't have the will or the strength to stand against these evil intentions and evil, influences.
So, exorcisms are specifically for demons, yes?
It's actually driving out any spirit that has made an attachment. That is one of those things. Is we've grown accustomed to the fact that it is, certainly in Catholic terms, only demons, but Catholics don't recognize ghosts.
Fair.
So, it really does become, if you have a malevolent spirit or an evil energy or something that is causing distress or destruction, you would call upon an exorcist to remove the attachment. And that's kind of what it is, because the word exorcism doesn't actually suggest what you're removing. It just says how you're removing it. You are removing something by binding words, by using words to command it away.
So it could be a ghost. Ghosts can possess, demons can possess.
Yes, and that is such a big and open debate, because some people will say there's no such thing as demons. It's all ghosts, and ghosts have a variety of motivations, and those motivations can come off as demonic because they are selfish and they are trying to, accomplish things that are harmful to the human being. And some people say there's no such thing as ghosts. They're only demons. Demons are pretending to be your long-lost relatives. They're pretending to be your disembodied humans, and they're doing that to ingratiate themselves to you and thereby giving influence upon you. And so there is like a schism of ideology there. There are people who don't believe in ghosts. There are people who don't believe in demons. Somewhere in the middle is just the idea that sometimes spiritual forces can be damaging and harmful, and you need to strengthen your resolve and your will to combat them. And oftentimes the way to do that is through prayer or through some kind of authoritative influence that you can kind of hold on to. And that's kind of why rituals work, is because we're raised in rituals, and the rituals give us some kind of sense of propriety and place. And that's why it doesn't have to be necessarily one of your own faith, because you recognize in others their faith and their strength. And you kind of, you concede that if a person has this high level of understanding and authority, you say, I trust that this person's abilities are greater than the influence upon my spirit.
Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. And we would probably get into even further and more nuanced discussions, but we are about, stick and move. Keep it up.
This is a fun fact that I've actually been to an exorcism,
There
and
you
I
go.
believe you have as well.
I have been to 5.
5 exorcisms.
Yes.
6 exorcisms between the two of us.
Exactly. That's a pretty good thing. And it's interesting because every faith has kind of a regimen that they go through, and it is no less authentic if you're going to, say, a Presbyterian exorcism versus a Catholic one, because it is, again, questions of faith and questions of utilizing presupposed words and intentions that drive spirits away.
I'm not going to get into details. There's no sense in it. But the exorcism, quote-unquote exorcism, that I went to, I later feel was needless. There was no point in it. I don't think there was an actual demon or ghost or anything in it. So, how would you know?
There is a concept of the placebo effect of exorcism.
Oh.
That, let's say it is mental duress. Let's say that there is some kind of mental impairment happening in the situation.
Yeah.
Sometimes having a clearly illustrated thing that is supposed to work helps the mind hold on to a process and can kind of drive away the feeling of helplessness and hopelessness that oftentimes falls over people when they are in the throes of that mental gymnastics that goes on. Like sometimes if you have these clinical depression, clinical mental issues, the way to mitigate it is by applying some sort of regimented practice.
Sure.
And not to suggest one way works better than the other or anything like that, but there is the idea that there is like this placebo effect where the mind says, oh, I can adhere to these rules because I understand them, or because I believe in them.
Yeah.
And that does make for a more almost pedestrian notion of exorcism as a way to give people tools to combat sensations and feelings that they feel overwhelmed by.
Fascinating. As a man thinketh, so shall he be.
Hey, nice. Well done. Which is interesting because that kind of brings us to the next idea for an E word then that's an egregore.
Egregore?
Egregore.
That was a character in Lord of the Rings, right?
No. So an egregore is a thought form. Egregore is basically a thought come to physical existence through the continued support of people's belief. An egregore is basically when people imagine something long enough that it starts to have an effect on the real world.
Oh, this fascinates me. This is one of my all-time favorite things. This is absolutely fascinating to me that literally you can will things into existence just by belief.
Yes, and it makes perfect sense because it's not a question of whether or not they exist or not. It's whether or not they have influence upon us.
Right.
That makes it as real as anything. If we all kind of participate with the illusion, then the illusion is actual reality because we treat it as such. But when it goes further in esoteric practices, occultism, and things like that, people do believe that by the simple conjuring of the thought form, you can actually create an actual entity. The clearest example of that in the recent history is Slender Man.
Right.
Slender Man is something that we absolutely positively know was created. We know who the creator was. We know why it was created. It was created for a contest on creepypasta on the internet. It was literally a create an urban legend, create a creature, and somebody did that. But because of the way the internet distributes information, people came across the stories without that background, without knowing that this was a part of a contest, a spooky story contest, and they began to invest their fear and their time and their energy to it, and people began to see Slender Man and have interactions with Slender Man, thinking that Slender Man was following them. And Slender Man, of course, has all of these earmark sort of indicators that remind us and are reminiscent of other entities, of other spirits and specters. And all of a sudden, there are people out there. There's that case where the girls committed murder because they said Slender Man told them to. And it's one of those things where you're like, okay, this is an egregore. This is where group thought, a group dynamic of belief and structured construct gave way to a thought form that had influence on us. Now, whether or not they really saw that, whether or not it was really happening is immaterial. It's about the influence of the thing. I remember in the 80s, there was a rash of people who were having Freddy Krueger nightmares.
Right, yeah.
It was a huge thing where people were having Freddy Krueger nightmares, and Freddy Krueger was a creation that haunted your nightmares, which kind of made him real.
Right.
Because his whole existence was he lives in your nightmares. And if you have nightmares about this thing that lives in your nightmares, where is the line?
Right, yeah.
Where do we draw the line between the existence of the Freddy Krueger of the story and the Freddy Krueger that was stalking throughout the 80s, young kids who saw the movie and then began to have these nightmares because it kind of wove into their consciousness. And that becomes the argument of the egregore in all ghost experiences. When you go to a place that is celebrated haunted, where you go to a place where everybody knows the story,
Sure.
We're just feeding the beast. We're just giving it form. We're having it repeated and repeated and told over and over, and people have fears and ideas about it, and it grows and grows. We talked about Cthulhu mythos.
Yep.
Lovecraft created a very intricate mythology, which is all fiction, but because it was so interconnected and so easy to trace, many people were like, I see a pattern in all of this. And now there are people who actually believe that Cthulhu is some thinly masked old god from another religion that was speaking to H.P. Lovecraft in dreams, and he wrote it down, and in his writing he was actually telling the truth about some eldritch horror. But the truth of the matter is, that is a good example of an egregore. The more people who participate and believe, the more influence the belief has. I think Santa Claus, another excellent example of an egregore, because so many people believe, and by belief, it's a tenuous thing. We acknowledge Santa Claus. We understand Santa Claus. If we see someone dressed as Santa Claus, we immediately know it's Santa Claus.
Right.
That gives us sort of this walks like a duck, talks like a duck, is a duck situation with a fictional characters, with something that was totally made up. But we accept it into our society, and it becomes a part of our reality. Our reality is determined by the belief that we indulge ourselves in.
It's fascinating to me, as I've said, but it's also like this dangerous slippery slope.
It's
when
very
you start
slippery slope.
Thinking about it and thinking about everything you believe in. And
when you
stuff.
start to apply it to larger things, it becomes problematic.
Yes, it does.
It absolutely does. And there is another thing called the tulpa, which is very similar, and we'll cover that in the teas. But it is interesting because I think an egregore oftentimes is the result of combined group dynamic, and by sort of delivering the idea to a large group of people, and then the large group of people have a consensus about the thing, and then that consensus becomes embroiled in our reality, which sounds like how religions are created.
Right.
And so that becomes, a discussion for another day. But I do think that a lot of people, when they experience ghosts and they experience things, they may be just experiencing this combined creation where a bunch of people have gotten together and agreed that this thing not only exists but has sway over our world.
Wow. That's some heavy stuff, man.
Yes. Another E word is ectoplasm.
Ectoplasm.
Ectoplasm is very interesting because it is believed that when spirits make contact with the physical world, the point of contact creates a residue. It kind of sweats. And so you get this kind of goo, famous in Ghostbusters as slime. So this slime is supposedly
funky.
ectoplasm. It is where when a spirit comes into contact with our world, it has kind of this gooey sort of thing. And in the 1800s, mediums used to go on stage and produce ectoplasm as a part of their proof that the spirits were present. But it was so disturbing how they did it, knowing that the audience would be very much convinced if this kind of organic and strange goo were to appear out of nowhere. Mediums used to swallow large swaths of like cotton. At the end would be a fishing line that came out of their mouths or out of their nose. And then someone off stage would pull on the fishing line, and this goo would just materialize in copious fashion. You'll see old photographs of mediums with this like thick and horrible goo coming out of their nose, out of their mouth, and they're suggesting that this is the spirit's residue. So ectoplasm is a highly questionable thing, and whenever you come across like somebody who's like, I found ectoplasm, one of the things that almost always comes up is, you should get it tested, take it to a lab.
Right.
So here's the thing. There are labs that will analyze. There's no set parameters to ectoplasm. Nobody knows what it is to begin with.
Right.
So if it came back and it was like, well, it's this much salt, this much that, it still doesn't really validate or discredit whatever the goo is.
Right,
It's
yeah.
not like they're like, oh, it's got ghostonium in it. It's like, so yeah, we could take any goo to a lab and have it analyzed, and even if it came back 100% like organic, natural materials,
Right.
that doesn't suggest one way or the other whether it's ectoplasm or not, because we don't know what ectoplasm is, you know, as a whole. So yeah.
Where did the idea of ectoplasm start?
So I want to say that there has always been a notion that when a spirit touches you and or touches objects, it leaves behind a kind of a stain. And so it's really started with just kind of like the ghostly stain, but it really didn't become popular until the mid-1800s when the mediums were using it as a proof of existence of spirits.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Another E that we use a lot is EMF, electromagnetic fields.
Oh, man. Why didn't I think of any of these?
EMF readers. So EMF, the electromagnetic field, is basically just anything that emanates an electromagnetic field. The EMF is usually referring to loose wires, things of that nature. You don't want high levels of EMF in your home because they can cause all kinds of things like dizzy spells, sickness.
Yep.
You can have adverse effects. Intriguingly, the same effects that a lot of people say happen when spirits are around. And there is a belief that spirits can generate EMF on their own, and that is why so many ghost hunters use EMF readers. There's a lot of tools that they have that supposedly transfer EMF into different types of signals and things that people can interact with. But the simple truth of the matter is, it's shoddy science at best. We don't really know what's going on. We do know that there are cases where there's spiritual activity, you oftentimes can pick it up on an EMF reader. That is very bizarre, and we cannot exactly determine what a spirit is doing to cause an EMF or to exert an EMF, because ideally we don't really put off a huge EMF, not enough for a reading, just by wandering around and doing stuff.
Right.
So it's weird that a spirit would when we do not. So there's a lot of questions about what EMF does and what EMF is, but it is the electromagnetic field, and it is oftentimes used to determine whether or not there's any paranormal anything in an area.
Now, I see you say these things, and now I'm just like sitting here thinking about it, and I don't have anything to say.
We also have EVPs, electronic
EVPs.
voice phenomenon. That is where you record something on any type of recording device, and when you play it back, you hear voices that you did not hear while you were standing there listening intently with your own ears. Somehow the machine has picked up little patterns and things. And we've had many interesting EVP sessions. Shout out to Flip Searle, who is an amazing EVP specialist. He actually, he's unparalleled skill at identifying an EVP. He'll listen to something and be, oh, there it is. And we heard nothing in the recording. And he'd be like, listen, and he'll play it over and over again until finally we're like, it's clear as day. How did you hear that? And I think it's just his ears. It's just how he works. His brain picks out these little kind of staticky whispers, but once you've heard it, you can't unhear it.
Right.
It becomes so clear to you. So EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, also a very big part of ghost hunting is to set aside a recorder that is just recording blank air, and it's doing it so that the spirits who do not have mouths, vocal cords, tongues, anything that allows them to create words, they are manipulating something else. They are trying to make sounds through something else, and that is why we have the spirit boxes, the spirit chats, and these things. It's because we overestimate ghosts' abilities, right?
Right.
We give the ghosts, I move that thing. I was like, if you ever want to know why ghosts don't move things, try moving something with just your mind.
Right.
Don't use your hands or your muscles, your bones. Don't use any part of your body. Just move it with your mind, and then wonder why ghosts don't move things more. Ghosts do not have bodies. No bones, no muscles, nothing. So if a ghost is moving an object, you're dealing with something phenomenal and maybe a little dangerous.
That would make sense. If it can move things, then it can move you. right?
Yeah. Stop your heart.
Oh, good Lord. I hadn't gone there. I was just like, he's going to shove you down the stairs. But no, he can stop your heart.
Another E word is empath. An empath is a variety of psychic ability where they attune to emotions.
Like in Star Trek.
Yes, like in Star Trek. Deanna Troi is
was
an
an
empath.
Yeah.
And she was, let's face it, useless. Because I would say 9 times out of 10, when Deanna Troi was telling us what a person was thinking, it was obvious. When there's a Klingon like, I'm going to kill you, she would say, I'm sensing hostility. Are you, Deanna? Good on you. That empath power is just paying off. So, yeah, sorry. I might have strong feelings about that. In any case, yes, an empath generally has the ability to tune into emotions, oftentimes feeling the emotions of people around her, but also feeling emotions that were very profound in an area. So if you go to a place where there is huge suffering and sorrow, oftentimes an empath can be overpowered by it. It is one of the worst psychic abilities because you're oftentimes feeling whatever the person felt in the last moments of their life. And if you go to a place where there was terror and horror and heartache, you feel it. So
And this is more than just empathy.
it's more than just empathy. It's more than the ability to recognize the sorrow and through it feel along with it. This is an empath actually is being hit with the actual feelings that were there from the person. They're getting a perspective that they are now in the point of view of the person suffering and have all those feelings and emotions kind of happening to them.
That sounds horrible.
It's yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, gosh, I think that it would be a terrible thing, but I think it is also very handy, unfortunately, in finding criminals and finding where crimes happen and finding victims. But it involves feeling the pain and the horror of these events. I would not recommend, like, if you're given like a list of powers that you can adopt, I think becoming an empath should not be on your list of powers you can adopt.
That doesn't sound. My condolences to all empaths out there.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
My
I'm sorry.
sympathies to you all, and you have such a struggle ahead of you, and more power to you. And I think that is enough E's. We definitely went through a lot of E's.
We went through a lot of E's. We got to save some for next time around.
Next time around, we'll talk about other E stuff like Eeyore. Eeyore.
I would like to mention something right now
Yes,
before we end this episode.
absolutely.
Earlier, I said Lord of the Rings, and I said it really weird.
You've been sitting there thinking about this the whole
I've been
time?
sitting here thinking about this the whole time. I said Lord of the Rings, like I'm
Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken. Lord of the Rings. And I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable, and I would like to
Which is the proper
apologize.
syllable? Is it rings?
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the
Rather
Rings?
than Lord
of the Rings.
Lord
Or
of the Rings. Anyway,
It's good to know that you can get caught up on such interesting little things.
really bothered me. I wanted
Yeah,
to,
obviously.
people are going to be listening and be like, what's wrong with him?
No, what's going to happen is they're now going to go back and listen and say, oh, he's right.
He's right.
What a weirdo.
That did sound
Where they
weird.
didn't even think about it before. Thanks for pointing it out.
Anyway, my apologies.
Until next time.